well, I don't know if they're officially back, but Lamont Butler is officially back. Kentucky's point guard is officially back. Jackson Robinson is officially playing. And I actually want to talk a little bit about here in a second about what's going on kind of internally there. But how important was it for Kentucky to get this win against South Carolina, following up their worst defensive performance of the season with their best defensive performance, at least of the SEC season?
Yeah, I mean, they needed South Carolina is what they needed here, right? Because they get Tennessee next. We'll be there on Tuesday night. They needed the Gamecocks. They needed to get right, to feel good about themselves again. And again, all they had heard, this was kind of a pride thing too. You know, all they had heard is you can't guard, you can't guard, you can't guard. And I'm sure Pope's been on him for that as well. But now you bring Lamont Butler back, and he's that guy who sets the tone, right? I mean, he's the one that doesn't have to say anything, just the way he plays. So I think having him back was huge. I think a pride factor was big in this one as well, but it was South Carolina. So it was a combination of all three. But again, we'll see if they can build on that against a Tennessee team that, you know, you don't know what you're going to get offensively on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll say this, right? The thing that I kind of took away from the last couple days is, one, I don't know if you saw this, but I guess Mark Pope broke some furniture or something like that, broke a table maybe in the Ole Miss locker room. He came to the press conference and he had a pretty obvious cut on his hand. No, he said it. He said he broke some furniture. He said it in a press conference. And then he also said prior to this game, so Jackson Robinson popped up on the SEC injury report on Friday night. What was that? Friday night with a wrist injury. And it was clear that, like, he was not feeling great. Like, they cut to him a couple times on the bench where he's sitting there grimacing in pain, holding on to his wrist. And Pope said something about how in practice that they were, I'm going to be paraphrasing here, but he essentially said practice has been pretty intense the last couple of days, and Jackson hurt his wrist in a collision with Brandon Garrison, which makes me think that Pope dialed it up the last couple of days. I mean, look, you're Kentucky, Mike. You've lost 4 out of 5. You got embarrassed at home with Coach Cal coming in and getting your ass kicked. Then you go to Mississippi, you go to Ole Miss, and you give up 98 points in 71 possessions. It was Matador defense that they were playing for 40 minutes. And Mark Pope, nicest guy in the world, sweetest guy. I think that he got there in practice. And
he's not behind closed doors, guys. That's
no,
not
I know.
him.
So
what you see of him is not Mark Pope. It's not the other Mark
What I'm
Pope.
saying is I think he got in practice these last couple of days and really, really lit him up. And I think that you're kind of seeing results of that. And we'll see if it continues against Tennessee on Tuesday. We'll be at that game, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, we could sit there and say, well, hey, you know, it was South Carolina. But when you're trying to get your defense right, and I understand South Carolina, you know, they don't have a ton of, you know, Murray Boyles is obviously a talented offensive player. They don't have a ton of them, but what they do is run a lot of offense and have long possessions. So if you're sitting there and you're Kentucky and you say, okay, well, we need to work on our defense. We need to find that grit defensively. What better team to do it against than a team that's going to drain every second of the shot clock like South Carolina? Like one thing with South Carolina is, you know, no SEC team is coming out of a game against South Carolina being like, hey, you know what? That was our cleanest, most in rhythm game we've played. It's just not. Like that's not what's going to happen when you're playing against South Carolina. So I thought when whatever the score was, I think it was either 50-41 at one point, and it got really quiet and rough. I thought Garrison knocking down a couple of shots. You know, Owe got out in transition a little bit. They were able to blow that thing out because of their defense and because they locked in on that end. They had more shot clock violations today forced than I think I've seen all season from them. So this is just like, regardless of who your opponent is, you can gain confidence on that end, just like you can if you're playing a non-conference team and you knock down 5 threes. You're still going into the next games thinking, you know what? Yeah, I can shoot the basketball. It's the same thing here. Like when you as a unit, like they did in the second half, guard at that level, I don't care who the opponent is. You know, you go into the next game and you're sitting there thinking like, yeah, this is what we're capable of. We can guard this way. Like they got Tennessee coming up now.
I think it's a confidence thing as much as anything, right? Like they
Yeah.
got shredded against Ole Miss, and you could see by the end of that game that they're not a great defensive team, Jeff, but by the end of that Ole Miss game, like it was worse than anything that you could imagine it being, right? And it was very clear that was more than just a schematic and effort thing. Like they were in their own heads. And I do think that there is something to be said for coming out and just overwhelming a team with your defense when you are not a team that is known for playing all that much defense. And oh, by the way, you got your point guard back. And like the head of the snake matters so much in college basketball.
Yeah, especially when it's Lamont Butler, right? I mean, the guy's a winner. He's a proven winner. So everybody kind of looks to him. He's kind of that guy that just leads by example. Just have him on the court, gives him a calming influence, and somebody that just kind of does everything the right way. So it's almost like Pope doesn't have to say certain things because Butler's on the court.